welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm doing a review for the Little Thieves series by Margaret Owen. I just recently finished this series and I have been obsessed with it. This series has the 3 main books to the trilogy, and then there is also a short novella that the author posted to AO3, but the main books of the series are Little Thieves, Painted Devils, and Holy Terrors. And then the AO3 novella is called The Fallow Year, and it goes between Painted Devils and Holy Terrors. In this, our main character is Vanya, and she is the daughter of the gods of death and fortune. But they have kind of given her an ultimatum that she does not want to comply with, and so instead she has taken to becoming a con artist and thief. She has taken on the identity of a princess, and while in that identity is also stealing from rich families. And she is almost at the end of her long con, almost has enough wealth to run away and start a new life, when a prefect investigator shows up, and he might be the only person who can see through her facade, who can catch her out. But she finds out that there are larger things at stake than just finding out her identity, and there are bigger things at play that she gets pulled into. Each book in this series has its own mystery that they are solving. There is a through line between all 3 books, or 4 if you count the little novella, but the through line really are just the characters and their relationships, but each book has its own mystery for them to tackle, and they are usually quite godly level mysteries. The gods are actively involved in this world, especially the god of justice, who the prefect investigator reports to. And of course, we have the godly parents of our main character, Vanya. So the gods are actively involved in this world and this story, which was an aspect of this that I really enjoyed. I really love the characters in this series. They are so lovable and endearing. Personally, it took me a second to warm up to Vanya's character. I've heard from other people that it seems like most people love her from the outset. For me, it took a second, and I think that is partially just because at the beginning she is such a out for herself type of character, and I think that the author did that very well. I think the way that she feeds us information about Vanya's life, her past, her traumas, make that aspect of her character make perfect sense for her. It feels very authentic to her character, but it just made me take a second to warm up to her. My favorite character really was Emmerich, because he is just a character trope that I am always obsessed with. He is this very kind of uptight, very buttoned up kind of character. He's always trying to do the right thing, but he also is very caring and thoughtful underneath all of that. And I love characters that are this perfect combination of both highly competent and yet also extremely awkward, and I am obsessed. And he is the type of character that when he is sad, I am dying inside. I just love him so much. And then there are also some side characters that we get along the way who are also so fun, and I think add a lot of fun perspectives into the mix. There is another character who is not human, and so she adds the fun kind of perspective that we often get from animal companions. She's not exactly an animal companion, but she provides this kind of outside perspective on human behavior and how strange some behaviors and norms are, which is always one of my favorite things about animal companions. So I really enjoyed her as a side character too. And we do get a little bit of a found family throughout the series, which I also love. One of the things that I was kind of surprised that it worked for me in this series was the humor. Humor in books doesn't always translate very well for me, and particularly the style of humor in this series is not one that would necessarily land for me in most cases, but again, I feel like it is so authentic to the character that the humor really did work for me. I also read this whole series as audiobooks, and I think that humor probably translates better, for me at least, hearing it as opposed to reading it. So I really enjoyed the humor in this because it felt like it just fit the character so perfectly. The series also has romance in it, which I was deeply invested in, and then our kind of main romance in the story does become fairly central, and it was so, like, I don't know, their romance ends up being very complicated and just deeply awkward. And honestly, that was one of my favorite things about it, was how extremely awkward, like the amount of awkwardness that just radiates off of these characters is immense. And I loved it. It just made them so endearing and lovable, and I felt so invested in this relationship and in these characters because of the vulnerability that they had. So as I said, each book in this series does have its own mystery that they're solving. But alongside that, there is this through line of the characters' relationship. In the second book, the relationship does take much more center stage than it did in the first book. And I think that it's not just because the series is becoming more like romance heavy. The story and the arc of this series is not just about these mysteries, but it's really about the characters' personal journeys, both with each other and on their own, as they are growing and developing. These characters have their own traumas and insecurities and things that they need to overcome, or that they need to accept, or they just need to grow in various ways. And those become much more obvious and more prominent through the lens of this relationship. The relationship really shines a spotlight on their most dysfunctional parts, but it is then following this kind of emotional, personal journey for these characters, and is really about finding yourself and learning to love yourself, allowing other people to love you even if you do not feel deserving, about, you know, identity and not losing yourself in a relationship no matter how much you love that other person, and being or becoming the type of person you want to be. Confronting your own shadow, your own trauma, to be your fullest self for yourself and to show up in a relationship as your fullest self. The series as a whole also has themes around justice, the nature of true justice, law versus justice, you know, power and privilege. I think one of the things that I really appreciated about the way that Vanya's character is portrayed is that she does such a good job of really highlighting what drove Vanya to these circumstances, to these choices, to the type of person that she is, that she didn't just end up here because she was like, you know what, I think it would be fun to steal from people. It makes it clear that she is the result of systemic issues, the abuse of power, inequity, her own traumas, her lack of choices and agency, and that she has done these things because this is what she felt she had to do to survive. And I don't think that's always something that is very clear in the way that thief or con artist characters are portrayed, and I think that it was just highlighted so perfectly throughout this series. And there are other characters that she encounters that this realization of how she has sort of been forced into these choices and into doing things that are against the law by circumstances is something that kind of dawns on other characters around her, and watching them kind of come to this realization is also really interesting to see. So in this series, the first book, I think I gave 3.5 stars because the first like 40-ish% I was enjoying, but I wasn't loving. But then like the second half of the book, I loved. And I think that's mostly because in the second half of the book, she gets more interaction with other characters. She starts to actually make connections with other characters, which is really my favorite part. So that's why that particularly had like a real steep uptick for me. So I think the second half I would have given like a 4 or 4.5 stars, but the first half was kind of like not as high for me, so I sort of averaged out to 3.5. The second book I had a lot more fun with. I really enjoyed that it was much more focused on the characters and their relationship and just like how deeply awkward they are, but also that so much like healing and growth is happening for these characters. And so I think I gave that one 4 or 4.5 stars. The novella that goes between books 2 and 3, I don't know if I can say I enjoyed it. All of the characters are very sad in this novella, but I do think it's helpful because it gives some emotional context to especially some characters that we then meet in the third book. So if you're meeting them for the very first time, you may not have that kind of emotional context as to who is this person and why do we care. And then the last book, book 3, oh my gosh, the emotional damage that this book caused me, the emotional distress. Once again, so many of the characters are so unhappy for so much of this book. And when I read the third book, I got like 20% of the way in, and then I was like, this is stressing me out too much. Not because of the plot, but because my favorite characters are sad, and when they're sad, I'm sad, and I am too stressed by this. And I don't know if this will be the case for everyone, but I'm like, I think I am too emotionally invested in these characters. So I had to put it down for like 2 months, and then I picked it back up. It does eventually get to a better like equilibrium. It's not just sad the whole time, but the first bit, I was struggling. Also, I will say, towards the end of the last book, there are some parts that get a little weird and trippy that I was like, do I really understand what's happening right now? I'm not sure. But overall, I loved the last book. I gave it 5 stars. And I think that this series, although I may not have rated every single individual book 5 stars, cumulatively, this is a 5-star series for me. So that is my review for the Little Thieves series by Margaret Owen. I would love to know, have you read this series? Is it on your TBR? Does it sound like something you want to read? Please talk to me about it in the comments because I am so obsessed with this series. But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!